Good morning and welcome to the Terry Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Sarah Wilbrock and I'm a junior Leonard Leadership Scholar and I'm studying marketing. The Institute for Leadership Advancement in the Terry College of Business is an undergraduate certificate program that develops values-based, impact-driven leaders. ILA instills leadership capabilities layered on top of the student's academic major that promote self-development, effective communication, teamwork, innovation, and adaptability in a changing global environment. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Doug Benn, the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the Cheesecake Factory. In his role as CFO, he is responsible for the day-to-day financial aspects of the company's business, including risk management, financial planning, and business strategy. He is actively involved in communicating the company's growth and conveying its growth outlook to Wall Street investors. Mr. Benn met his wife, Mickey, at UGA, and they have been married for 38 years. They are currently enjoying a bi-coastal lifestyle. He lives and works in California while Mickey lives in Atlanta and makes numerous West Coast trips. They have two daughters, Kelsey and Madeline. Mr. Benn is a double graduate from the University of Georgia and the Terry College of Business and a strong supporter of the Terry College. He is a recipient of the 2016 Terry Distinguished Alumni Award and will be naming the Capital Markets Lab in Phase 2 of the Terry Business Learning Facility. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Doug Benn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Sullivan, and I'm a junior Leonard Leadership Scholar studying Finance and International Business. And this morning, it is my pleasure to interview our esteemed guest here, Mr. Doug Benn. Thank you for being here so much. It's truly an honor.
You're welcome.
So I'd like to start off the discussion this morning with just having you share a little bit more about your time at UGA and how it led you throughout your career to your current role at the Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, Alex, I liked my time here at Georgia so much that I came here twice. I came at two different times. When I first graduated and had my undergraduate degree in accounting, I moved to Dallas, Texas, and went to work for the accounting firm of Arthur Andersen in Dallas in their audit division. And after about 5 years of doing that, I decided, well, auditing's really not for me. I want to be a tax person. And I decided if I want to be a tax person, I better learn something about tax, at least. So I came back to Georgia, and I got my master's degree in taxation, MACC, with a tax emphasis. And that was 1982. That was the last year that Herschel Walker played football at Georgia. So I can say that I was a student with Herschel Walker. And I did attend every home football game that fall. So after I graduated and went back to work for Arthur Andersen, this time in the Atlanta office and this time in the tax division. And during probably 3 or 4 years later, one of my clients in the tax division offered me an opportunity to come to work for him and to help to build the restaurant concept that he had created that was called Rio Bravo Cantina. It was a Mexican restaurant brand. And I decided to do that. And during my next 10-year stint there, I learned a lot about the restaurant business and a lot about the hospitality business and a lot really about how to be the CFO of a small company. And that prepared me well for my next role, which was with an Atlanta-based company in the restaurant business. It was a public company this time. And we operated and owned two steakhouse concepts called Longhorn Steakhouse and the Capitol Grill. So I was there for a period of about 10 years. Again, learned a lot more about the restaurant and hospitality business and learned a lot about how to be the CFO of a public company. And that we ended up selling that company to Darden Restaurants, and that's what led me to my role with the Cheesecake Factory today. And I've been there for the last 8.5 years. And I like to describe my my career, at least the hospitality time of my career, as I started off with margaritas, chips, and salsa at the Mexican restaurant. Then I moved on to great entrees with steaks at Longhorn Steakhouse and Capitol Grill. And then now I'm enjoying cheesecake for dessert at the Cheesecake Factory.
Excellent, excellent. That is truly incredible. So you speak of so many changes throughout your career, and you had to take many points when you took a strategic jump and decided that you were going to go perhaps from accounting into the restaurant industry or something else. Can you speak a little bit more about how you know when it's the right time to make those decisions and what things you had to take into account?
You know, that's an interesting question. I think that there's there's a lot of playing it by ear that you have to do. I didn't know that I wanted to be in the restaurant business, for instance, but I happened to learn about this opportunity from someone that just happened to be a client of mine, and I just sort of happenstanced into that. And I think that making your judgment about when the proper time to make different moves is going to be just dependent on your own individual situation. I knew that when I graduated in accounting and I went to work and I did a lot of detailed accounting work when I was with Arthur Andersen, I knew that eventually I wanted to move more on into a broader business arena and to not simply focus only on accounting. So I tried to do things that prepared me to do that over time.
That's truly incredible. So a lot of us here as undergraduates, we would probably be unwise if we said we knew exactly what we wanted to do. And even you said you didn't know that you wanted to be in the food industry initially. So what advice can you give to us as we're trying to understand what we are really passionate about, and as we take those first key steps in our careers to hope that we can always make the right decisions throughout to find something that we really care about?
Yeah, again, I would just say that you've got to try to get involved and experience as much as you can. So I think your time here at the university, even taking advantage of events like this, you're gonna hear of things that you don't know about and that perhaps are things that you want to pursue. It is difficult, I think. It was difficult for me because when I came to the university, my initial major was political science. And I basically stayed in that for one semester because I got practical and I started thinking, well, what am I really going to do with this when I graduate with a degree in political science? So what I did was it evolved for me over time that I knew that I wanted to do something outside of accounting. I knew that I wanted to get be able to get in a position where I could change to something different if I wanted to.
That's excellent. So the Cheesecake Factory was actually recently named by Fortune magazine as one of the top 100 places to work for its third consecutive year. How do you foster this type of incredible working environment for such a high level of leadership within the firm?
Yeah, Alex, I think it would come. I would like to talk about the culture at the Cheesecake Factory, and I think it's the culture that drives that. And at the Cheesecake Factory, we have a culture of I would call it a culture of excellence, and that culture of excellence fosters a culture of pride. In fact, one of our core values is a passion for excellence. And so that was the culture of excellence was really, I think, necessitated 40 years ago when the concept was first created, because what we're trying to do as a brand is so hard and so impossible to really try to do. We're trying to produce 250 menu items that are made from scratch every day, 70 sauces, dressings, and marinades. There's no like Caesar dressing bottle in one of our restaurants. The Caesar dressing that you have on your salad, that was made by us that morning. So the culture of excellence was really necessitated by the complexity of what we were trying to do at the Cheesecake Factory. And so we had to be excellent at what we were doing. We had to continuously improve. And that fostered this culture of pride, because if you're a line cook at the Cheesecake Factory, you're really good at what you do. You could be a line cook at any other restaurant if you can be one at the Cheesecake Factory. It's very difficult to be a server at one of our restaurants. You have to know what the ingredients are in 250 menu items. I don't think that I could be a server at one of our restaurants. It's very difficult to do. And the people that work at the Cheesecake Factory are very, very proud of what they do. And that extends to me. I can tell you when I'm in an environment where somebody doesn't know me and they say, well, what do you do for a living? And I say, well, I work in the restaurant business. And then 100% of the time, what do you think the next question is? Well, what restaurant do you work for? And when I say that I work for the Cheesecake Factory, the response is almost universally positive. They want to tell me about an experience that they've had, or they want to relay what their favorite menu item is or something like that. And so that's makes me proud, and it validates what I do. So I think it's our culture that has made us a great place to work, and that's a culture of excellence that fosters this culture of pride.
Absolutely, and it's something you should very much be proud of. And so you speak a lot about influencing the culture, and I imagine you had a lot of influence over it from the leadership position that you had. But for many of us who will be going into entry-level positions, how can we exert influence on an organization's culture from the very bottom of the organizational structure?
I would say that that you should get involved, and get involved early on. Start to show leadership as early as you can in your new organization. I would say that you should find a way to serve and to be of service, and it might be different in one organization than another. I would say do whatever it takes to make yourself indispensable. And one way to make yourself indispensable might be that you always do more than what is expected. So certainly you would do what is expected, but then do a little bit more. So I think those are things that I would just say are important. If you're one of the people that maybe have a little bit of trouble, or maybe you're a little shy or introverted and getting involved is not easy for you, one of the things that I would recommend is that you try to get outside of your comfort zone. Occasionally, not all the time, but put yourself outside of your comfort zone, kind of put yourself out there. And I think that what will happen over time is then that your comfort zone would expand. And that certainly happened with me. I'm relatively introverted, really, and I've forced myself to be outside of my comfort zone probably thousands of times. And that's really helped my comfort zone to expand over time. And now I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you're on stage right now, and you're doing a great job of it. So I would agree. So you speak about expanding your comfort zone, and that when you kind of push yourself to the limit, that is absolutely the long-term effect. But in the short run, you could be experiencing some failures as well. And oftentimes, we learn the most through those same key failures. So can you share one of your key failures with us and how it made you a better business leader and a person as well?
Yeah, I would say that we do, you're correct, I think we do learn more when we struggle a little bit and when we have some failures. And I don't know if it's a failure per se, but I would say that when I was trying to come up with what my key leadership attributes were going to be, I was really trying to reinvent the wheel. And I was trying to come up with leadership characteristics that were unique to me and that I could really utilize. And I found out I really didn't have to do that, that many of the leadership characteristics that I have today have come from others. And I'm constantly observing what others are doing and trying to learn out of how they're leading me what I like about that and what I don't like about that, and then trying to utilize the parts that I like and make them my own. And I think that you can do the same thing. You can ask yourself the question of the people that are leading you or have led you in the past, what do you like about their leadership characteristics, and what do you not like and why, and then copy, borrow, steal, whatever those good characteristics and make them your own. So my leadership characteristics today are a patchwork of what I've learned from others.
Absolutely, and I think that's exactly what everyone can only hope to do, is look to people they admire, reappropriate whatever leadership characteristics they feel are best exemplified in that person, and then craft in their own individualized style. I think that's what a lot of students strive to do. And it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think it ties in very well with mentorship, because there's really a twofold approach to mentorship. One is a mentee, probably a student, a younger professional. Then another is a mentor, perhaps someone in your position with a lot more leadership. So how have you approached mentorship both early in your career when you were at our levels and then now as in more of a leadership role?
Yeah, I have certainly had a number of mentors throughout my career, but I don't think it was a formal mentorship relationship where they were formally named my mentor and I was named as their mentee. In fact, I think that most mentoring happens informally. And again, the leadership characteristics that I have today, I've learned from watching and observing what others are doing. And I also know that conversely, that others are watching what I'm doing and that I'm mentoring them in sort of this informal way constantly as well. And I would say that that one thing that I've learned from a mentor of mine is the value of recognition, appreciation, and personalization. And because I learned that from a mentor, and it wasn't formalized, it was more that this person would recognize me or appreciate me or personalize their message to me in some way. And when they did that, I knew how good that felt. And I knew that that was something that would be good to put into as part of my repertoire of things that I did. And so today I do a couple of things that are sort of around recognition, personalization, and appreciation. And one is I send a personalized baby gift to everybody on my team who's had a baby. And in the last 8.5 years at the Cheesecake Factory, there's been a lot of people that have had children. And it's a very simple gift. It's a crib sheet and a pillow that's very decorated colorfully with the name of the newborn and their birth date all over the crib sheet. And I usually send that to them with a personalized note of congratulations and make sure I include the spouse as well. The other thing that I do is I send a handwritten holiday card to everybody on my team every year, not just the managers or the leaders, but everybody on my team. And that holiday card always includes the word thank you or appreciate somewhere in there. I always have a sentence or two about something personally that I know about that person or something that's going on in their lives. And I make sure to address that to a spouse, to their spouse as well. So I only do that because of what I learned from one of my mentors, that I knew that that was effective with me, and I thought that it would be effective for me.
Completely, and I think recognition is very key, and it's something that we talk about a lot in ILA. So when we spoke earlier, we spoke about the mentor-mentee relationship, a lot of it being informal. But we also know that leadership is often a two-way street. So how do you think your influence on your own employees by sending them personalized holiday cards, sending them this personalized baby gift every time one of them has a baby, how does that influence their own contribution back into the greater organization?
I think that they, first of all, they're dedicated to the organization or tied to the organization in a better and more secure way. They want to perhaps serve and determine how they're going to be able to change and lead over time. I think that one of the things that I am most proud of in my career has been that I've been able to build strong teams in the organizations that I've been with. And I think that this recognition and personalization is one way to put the step in the right direction of building a strong team. I've been in the lead finance role for 3 different companies, and I think that I've built pretty good teams in each one of them. And all these companies were different than each other. And one of the companies, the first one was very entrepreneurial and small, and the last 2 have been public companies. And I think in the last 2 companies, in particular, I've been able to put together teams that were so strong and knew what they were doing that I was able to get out of the day-to-day work. I really didn't have to do that. I could think more long-term or more about strategy because these people had it. This team knew what they were doing in IT. They knew what they were doing in accounting. They knew what they were doing in risk management and other areas that I managed. So I really didn't have to be that involved with that anymore. And that's something that I'm proud to say that I've accomplished.
Absolutely, and I think we can all agree that the specialization of tasks really aids to the completion of these really complex goals that companies like the Cheesecake Factory need to accomplish. I want to touch a little bit on something we were speaking about earlier with regard to innovation. The Cheesecake Factory is a very large organization, but it has been able to innovate at a very impressive rate. What do you attribute that to? And can you share some of the really exciting innovations that your company's come out with recently?
Yeah, it is. It's driven by our founder and the culture that he's created. And I think that from an innovation standpoint, there's no one in the restaurant industry that innovates their menu as much as we do. So twice a year, there is a menu change done. The menu, again, is already a 250-item menu, so it's a big menu. And twice a year, there's a menu change done, and sometimes the menu change is substantial, where there's a whole new menu category that we put in as part of the menu. And we have, a couple of years ago, we added a whole new menu called Skinnylicious. So you go to the Cheesecake Factory, I don't know how many, I hope most of you have been to our restaurants, but you have the spiral-bound notebook of 250 menu items, but now you also get a skinnier menu that has 50 other, we didn't think 250 was enough. So it has 50 other menu items, and they're all under 590 calories or less. So you can, and they're all Cheesecake Factory type of portions. They're all Cheesecake Factory flavor profiles. So very good items, but lower calorie. And that innovation was in response to just people wanting to eat healthier, or at least eat fewer calories. So I think that one of our competitive advantages is the complexity of the menu, and the other competitive advantage is our willingness to innovate and constantly change that menu.
I want to speak a little bit more about competitive advantage as well, because you made a very profound statement earlier today when asked about who the competitors of the Cheesecake Factory are. So can you please describe the competitive landscape for us and why you think the Cheesecake Factory is in its best position right now?
Yeah, I think because I get this question a lot, so one of my primary responsibilities is to meet with restaurant analysts and Wall Street investors, and we get asked the question, well, who are the competitors of the Cheesecake Factory? And the answer, I think the right answer is that we don't have any direct competitors. Nobody really wants to do what we do. 250 menu items made from scratch? You're kidding me. That's almost impossible to do. But while we don't have any direct competitors, I look at everybody as being our competitor. I mean, so everybody that is offering food, it can be a grocery store of prepared foods, that I think that they're a competitor of ours. But as far as direct competition of somebody that's doing exactly what we're doing, there's nobody like that.
Exactly, which makes you in a very unique position because you're able to innovate so rapidly, yet at every step of the way that if the wrong decision is made, it could put you back with everyone else. And so it's a very careful balance there between understanding what you should be doing and how to keep the Cheesecake Factory its own unique thing, but at the same time not overstepping the bound and ending up in a less strategic position than you were before.
Right, that's true.
So I want to switch gears a little bit now and talk about altruism. You serve on the board of the Oscar and Evelyn Overton Charitable Foundation, named after the founders of the Cheesecake Factory. Can you speak a little bit more about what giving back means to you and how you encourage the Cheesecake Factory employees to do their own part and give back to charities of their choosing?
Yeah, I think that giving back is extremely important in our organization. The charitable foundation that you mentioned that I'm on the board of is the primary driver of the charitable endeavors at the Cheesecake Factory. And the major event that they put on every year is a big golf tournament. And the golf tournament is so large that it raises a couple of $100,000 a year that is then donated to the City of Hope, which is a cancer research hospital. And dozens and dozens of Cheesecake Factory people are volunteering and helping with this golf tournament and to carry it off, and that's something that we encourage them to do. The foundation also puts on 13 or 14 different Thanksgiving Day feasts in different metropolitan areas where we have restaurants. And hundreds and hundreds of food-deprived people or homeless people come and are served a 3 or 4 course meal by hundreds of Cheesecake Factory volunteers. So we're very involved with that. We have an annual peanut butter drive, which is every restaurant it competes against other restaurants to see how much peanut butter they can bring in, and that's donated to a local food bank. We're talking about giving back, but our program that we have with our restaurants is called the Give Back Program. And in the Give Back Program, each restaurant's supposed to determine something in their local community that they can do, and that is supported by the Charitable Foundation. And the company itself donates a portion of the proceeds of every sale of the new cheesecake flavor each year to Feeding America, which is a hunger relief organization, and that has resulted in a couple of $1 million being donated to that organization over time. So, yeah, giving back is very important. I think it's not only the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. If I put my CFO hat on, and I would just tell you that it's good business to do it. It's one of the reasons we're on the 100 Great Places to Work, because people simply want to work for companies where that's part of their priorities.
Of course, and understandably so. So what do you think is the responsibility of people that, and especially firms, that experience great success to go forward and take their own initiative to create these kind of charitable organizations or to engage in such philanthropy?
What do I think that I think that's an important part of what they should be doing. You know, I run everything sort of through a financial filter. So, you know, so when I come to the conclusion that being, for instance, very environmentally sound and having sustainable practices or charitable endeavors and those things, the conclusion that it's good business is important in addition to the fact that it is the right thing to do. So, and I think that those two things clearly, sustainability and giving back, are clearly things that are good, financially sound things to do for an organization from the person that's responsible for the financial welfare.
Agreed. So switching gears again, you're currently living a bi-coastal lifestyle out in LA, families here in Atlanta. Can you talk a little bit about how you manage to balance the work-life relationship with increasing responsibility on the work front?
Yeah, people ask me still after 8.5 years, they say, are you still commuting back and forth between Los Angeles and Atlanta? And I never really have commuted. It was I live in California. Mickey, my wife, lives at our house in Atlanta, and she's the one that does the commuting. So she comes to California to see me for a week or 10 days at a time. And I've come to Georgia probably 10 or 12 times a year, a little more often in the fall when I feel compelled to attend an event at Sanford Stadium. But when we made the decision to have me accept this position and for me to live in California, from a work-life balance perspective, it was a pretty easy decision for us to make at that point in time in our life cycle. We have 2 daughters. One of the daughters had already graduated from college at that time. The other was in college. So there was no one really living at home at our house in Atlanta. So we said, well, why not try what we've come to be called as our California adventure? Why not do this? And 6 or 7 years earlier, it wouldn't have worked out as well because we would have had a daughter in like middle school or high school and high school, and it just wouldn't have been maybe the right thing to do. So from a work-life balance perspective, I think this would apply to you, but it certainly applied to us. From a work-life balance perspective, I think that my perception of what work-life balance is has changed like 6 or 7 times throughout my career, and I think that it will be that way for you. If you kind of think of what's going to happen to you, you're going to graduate, you're going to get a job, you're going to perhaps move to a city that you're not familiar with, and maybe you're going to get engaged and get married and have children, et cetera. You're going to go through that, and I think that what you consider work-life balance will change through each of those periods of time. When you graduate from college, you might think for the first year or 2 or 3 years or 5 years that working 12 hours a day is fine. That's good work-life balance for me. I want to go out there and really show these new people that I really know what I'm doing, and you work really hard, and you work and party hard for some period of time, and that's good work-life balance. But later on in your life, when you have a 5-year-old that has a soccer game at some really convenient time, like 2 in the afternoon, and you don't get to go to those soccer games very often because of your work commitments, well, you're going to think something different about work-life balance. So I kind of think that that's a little bit where leadership comes in, because I think you can lead your own life and sort of plan on how that's going to happen. Not plan in a rigid way, but plan in a flexible way for how you're going to see work-life balance at various stages in your life. And I'll add one other thing I just thought of, that having a spouse or partner that is on board and has a plan of their own, and that plan's in sync with yours, I think that that's important, because there's going to be a time when you're going to need to step out or step up to help him or her, and there's going to be a time when the converse is going to be true. So I think that that's something that's important.
Of course, and a give and take is always critical. So a lot of us, when speaking about work-life balance, going into these entry-level positions, it will be very demanding. And there will probably be times when we have to make a key decision about taking time to invest in our own selves and take a little bit of free time, or continue, the work hard mentality. So what do we need to consider when trying to understand if we're taking this too far, or if we should be really investing in ourselves?
That's a really good question, and it's a hard one to answer, because it's you want to invest in yourself, and you also want to have this time to do the other things in your life that you want to do other than just work, right? So it's a balance, I think, that everyone struggles with, and I can say, just from a personal perspective, is the way that I work through that, and I talked about having a spouse or a partner. My wife Mickey and I were always on board with what needed to happen when, and there were certain sacrifices that one or the other of us had to do in order to make the work-life balance come out to what we wanted it to come out to in that particular point in time. So I think that's what, from my personal experience, knowing when to, you've got to be responsible enough to make sure that you're not shirking any of your responsibilities with what you're doing, and that you're doing, when I talked about doing more than is expected, that you're still doing more than is expected, but you've got to have long-term work-life balance, or you won't want to continue doing what you're doing. So it is a delicate balance.
Agreed. So as we wrap up here a little bit, I wanted to ask you, from such a leadership perspective, what could someone like us, coming fresh out of undergraduate, do to impress someone like you in an organization?
I mentioned getting involved, and I mentioned making yourself indispensable, and showing a way to serve. But I would say, in addition to that, if you'd add, I would say be passionate, exhibit high energy, show that you care, and be positive. I think if you add those things to the mix, that you would certainly stand out to somebody like me, and you would stand out to a lot of people.
And I think it comes back to goal alignment, like we were speaking about earlier. When you get everyone working in your organization excited about the same things, everything else kind of just follows naturally. So I agree, it's completely about that initial step. So I think we have time right now for a couple of audience questions. I'd like to open it up here. Yes, right in the front.
Hi, Mr. Ben. My name's Chase Wilson. I'm a junior finance major here at Leonard Leadership Scholar. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to you on behalf of ILA and everyone here. It's been a pleasure hearing you speak and share your experiences. And my question relates to values. So in the ILA program, in the past year, we've spent a lot of time thinking about our core values and how they affect the way we lead. So my question for you is, what are 2 or 3 of your core values and how they affect the way you lead others at the Cheesecake Factory?
Okay, you're talking mainly about I think my personal core values. I want to talk just briefly first about the fact that I've been fortunate enough to work for organizations that have all had strong values, and the Cheesecake Factory is certainly no exception to that. And I think I mentioned earlier one of our core values being a passion for excellence. And when you came in today, you received a quadfold card that articulates the Cheesecake Factory mission, vision, and our 7 core values, one of which is a passion for excellence. And you can read the other core values on that card when you get a chance. But the other thing, while I'm thinking of it, when you leave today, you're also going to get something else. You're going to get cheesecake. So you're going to get a gift card for cheesecake. You'll have to go to one of our restaurants in Atlanta or some other city, obviously, where we have a restaurant to use it. I won't promise you that there'll be low calories involved, but I will promise you it'll be absolutely delicious. So with respect to back to values, though, I like the Cheesecake Factory 7 core values, and I try to live by them. But I do have a number of personal core values, and the first is trust and integrity. I think that is such a key core value, because without somebody trusting you or thinking that or knowing that you operate from a position of integrity, I don't think you're going to get very far from a leadership perspective. The other thing I can think of is really to treat everyone else like a partner. I really don't like it when someone refers to me as their boss. I look at others in our organization as being partners of mine, that we all have a common goal to try to move the business of the Cheesecake Factory forward and increase our sales and our profitability and all those things that we're trying to do to grow. But that we both have important jobs. I mean, you may be paying the bills and I may be leading the finance organization, but both those jobs are important. In fact, if the bills aren't paid, something might happen bad earlier than if I don't do what I do. So, I look at treating other people as my partner as opposed to a subordinate, superior relationship as being an important value. And then the last thing I think I would mention is, as important personal core value, and it may be more of a leadership characteristic than it is a value, but I would say to be humble and to be authentic. And I think people gravitate toward leaders that have some kind of humble characteristic about them, and I think that's important. One way to show that you're humble is to give credit to others and to really share your successes. If you've just completed an important project and it was successful and others helped with achieving that success, then giving them credit is something that really shows that you're a humble leader. In fact, I love the quote from, it was either Ronald Reagan or Harry Truman or maybe both of them, but it goes something like, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. So I would say those are a couple of my key core values.
Excellent. Do we have any other audience questions? Just raise your hand and we'll get you a mic.
Of the 250 items on the menu, what's your favorite one? If I'm going to go there, haven't been to Cheesecake Factory before, what am I going to get with the little card that I have?
Well, you're going to get cheesecake with the gift card that you have, and unfortunately, you're not going to have very many choices. We only have like 35 different flavors of cheesecake. So you're going to get cheesecake, and we come up with a new cheesecake flavor every year, and I could tell you what that is, but then I'd have to kill you. So my favorite menu item, that's a hard one to answer. The most sold menu item is called chicken Madeira. And the most commonly ordered appetizer is avocado egg rolls. I often go into our restaurants to eat, and you get this menu, and I really don't want to look at all this and really decide. So what I normally order whatever is the new thing. I do that a lot, but then sometimes I just will like open to a page, and I'll say, surely there's something on this page that I like, and I'll order from that. That's how I'll do it.
Excellent. So now we all have a good cheesecake recommendation. Hope you're taking notes. Any other questions from the audience?
I was just wondering what your favorite memory back at Georgia was.
My favorite memory back at Georgia. This is going to be sort of a weird one. So I don't know if it's my favorite one, but it certainly stands out. Back when I was at Georgia, streaking was popular. Maybe that shows how long ago it was. But I don't know if that's my favorite memory, but it's certainly, sometimes you go to these seminars or whatever where they want you to write down something that somebody else doesn't know about you, right? And so I usually write down that I was streaking at Georgia.
Excellent. Okay, do we have anything else from any other audience questions here? Yes, in the back.
Hey, I'm Maddie. I'm from California, and I know there's been a big push for all these dietary restrictions, like gluten-free and just eating really healthy. I'm sure you've been exposed to that being out there. Have you been, struggling to adapt the menu to those type of customers? Or are you trying to keep it more traditional to I don't care how many calories are in this? And I know you said you have a healthier menu now, but there are a lot of people who are going gluten-free and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Our number one thing is we want to be something for everyone. So one of our competitive advantages is there's a no veto vote for coming to our restaurant. So if you're going out to eat with 3 or 4 other people, one of the things that one of the other people can't say is, I don't want to go to the Cheesecake Factory because I don't like the offerings of food that they have there. There's just something for everyone. And we were asked, I'm thinking back to our shareholder meetings, and our shareholder meetings are generally attended by maybe 20 people. I mean, we have lots of shareholders, but only 20 of them come to the shareholder meeting. And there was one lady that year after year after year, she says, what about a gluten-free menu? And we, in fact, have a gluten-free menu. So it took us a while to come up with it because it is very difficult to do from the standpoint, if you want it to be truly gluten-free, you can't cook with the same thing that you just cooked something with that had gluten in it. So that required some adjustments to some of the things we do. But we have if you go into our restaurant today, and first of all, on the menu, I think it's designated things that are gluten-free, or if you want to see the gluten-free menu, you can. People that want to eat gluten-free know about that menu, and they ask about it.
Well, on behalf of the Institute for Leadership Advancement and the Terry Leadership Speaker Series, we'd like to thank Mr. Doug Ben for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we want to thank all of you for attending today. As you leave, please let us know that you were here by filling out your Who You Are card, and we look forward to seeing you at next year's series. Thanks.